بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. For today's halaqah, we're actually going to be discussing one of the more sensitive habits that, as a matter of fact, many people are embarrassed to really talk about it. However, it is a real problem. It is plaguing our societies. It is plaguing our Muslim and non-Muslim communities. And many people are embarrassed to talk about it. They don't want to come up and confess the fact that I'm committing this habit. What do I do? So that being said, I decided to discuss this habit for today, inshallah, and we're gonna break it down as we did with the previous ones, and we're gonna talk about its realities, its dangers, and how do we overcome it. The habit that we're going to be discussing today is the habit of looking at and watching the habit of watching explicit content or pornography. And I'm sure you understand why this is considered a sensitive topic, because it's one of the youth can come up to me, for example, I'll tell you, Sheikh, I'm struggling with backbiting, I'm struggling with using bad words, I'm struggling with this and that. So things like this are easier, or other sins perhaps are easier to come up with and disclose. However, when it comes to something like pornography that is very heavily frowned upon in our religion, it might be a little bit more difficult. However, the dangers are real, and it is an epidemic, honestly, that we have in our society. The hidden struggle of pornography, the shame that comes and is associated with pornography, such that it causes you not to come and talk about it. But I want to start off by mentioning that first and foremost, this is a very serious issue. No, it is not a trivial issue. No, it is not a small issue. And so, if you are someone who is watching explicit content, and I highly encourage you, please listen to what I have to say. I just did a little bit of research, and I highly encourage you to go and do some research yourself as well, because I don't have the time to go and read it all off to you, but just to give you a little bit of a glimpse about some of the things that I have read. First and foremost, just to kind of show you the scale of the issue that we are facing, first and foremost, there's a survey that says the majority of males are exposed to pornography before the age of 18. Before the age of 18, many men and women are actually exposed to pornography. And there was a study that was conducted in the UK towards teenagers, youth, before the age of 18, between the age of 12 and 18. And the survey found that 22% of students, they watched porn frequently. Like, it was an addiction to them. It was a habit. 1 in 10 were heavily addicted to watching pornography. Another study in the USA found that 42% of youth, 42% aged between 10 and 17, reported that they had viewed porn online. They have searched it up and they have watched videos online. And this issue is not only unique to men. This is a reality as well. We have to acknowledge it is also an issue that our sisters, the females, are also facing as well. While pornography and watching explicit content is something that is found more within males, another study shows that 44% of men in general have watched pornography before. Can you imagine, like 44%? This is almost 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 men. You will find that this person has watched pornography. Whereas for women, the number is less, but it is still quite significant. 11% of women worldwide have been exposed to pornography and to explicit content online. So 11%, this is 1 in every 10 women. So this is important because it shows us that this issue is not just for men. It's not just something that men struggle with, that rather it is something, and in fact the numbers are currently growing even among women. One more survey that I'll mention to you. There was a study conducted, and they surveyed, and in this study they surveyed 2,169 people, and they found that out of these people, who were struggling with pornography, 45% of them were heavily struggling when it came to quitting the habit. They had full intention and they were fully serious about quitting it. 45% of them reported that they were struggling to quit the habit, and 72% of them experienced a relapse. What is a relapse? Relapse, it means that, perhaps they tried to quit and it perhaps worked for a week, 2, 3 weeks, and then they fell back into the habit. So the point of me telling you all of this and starting with this is to, first and foremost, I want to reiterate the same point that I started this whole series with. You're not alone in your struggle. Many others out there are also struggling. Perhaps Muslims as well. Perhaps some of your own friends that you don't even know that they're struggling with this are also struggling in this. And this is why this is a silent pandemic. It's a silent epidemic. It's plaguing our societies, but it's a hidden struggle. Not many people like to come out and say, I'm struggling with this habit, or I'm watching. And as you should never expose your habits. However, it's a reality. Perhaps some of us are struggling in this. Now, we acknowledge your struggle, and it's an addiction at the end of the day, and an addiction is not something to be laughed at or to be brushed aside. It is something serious. However, we also have to acknowledge the severity of the sin, and we have to acknowledge also the harms that are associated with this sin. And perhaps, if anything, this is something that Allah Azza wa Jal is testing you with. Every single person, as I mentioned at the beginning of the series, every single person is struggling with a habit. Perhaps this is what Allah Azza wa Jal is testing you with. So, with that said, what does Islam say about viewing explicit content and pornography? Now, obviously, this is haram. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. Do not even come close to committing zina, because it is immoral and a very evil path. And notice the wording here. Allah Azza wa Jal, He's saying, He does not say, don't commit zina. Now, obviously, zina is a major sin, and zina is kind of like the final stage, right? It's the actual act now being committed. This is the major sin. However, Allah Azza wa Jal is not telling you simply don't commit zina. He's saying don't even come near zina. Don't take the steps that will lead you to zina. So, is watching pornography considered zina? It is not considered zina in the sense of the actual deed of zina. However, pornography is taking you on the pathway to zina. And Allah Azza wa Jal explicitly commands in the Quran, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُم. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze and to protect their private parts. And in the verse after that, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. Tell the believing women as well to lower their gaze as well. Lowering the gaze is not just for the men to the women, it is also with the women to the men. And, I guess men to men and women to women. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. But the commandment of lowering the gaze and protecting our private parts has been commanded to both believing men and women. In another hadith, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he explained to us, just to paraphrase the hadith, he says, every son of Adam has his share of zina decreed for him. And he says and explains in the hadith, the zina of the eyes is by looking. So the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam here, he expands the understanding and the definition of what exactly is zina. And he says, zina, again, the act of zina is what is considered to be the major sin. But he says that your eyes also does zina. How does your eye commit zina? It commits zina by looking at that which it is not allowed to look at. So, all of these verses and all of these hadith, there's many, many more. However, it is very clear and is well understood. And no Muslim out there who watches pornography will tell you that watching pornography is okay. Everybody who watches pornography He's doing it in secret, he's doing it in private, because he understands and acknowledges that what he's doing is something that is wrong and is something that Islamically he should not be doing. So alhamdulillah, I do not need to go and elaborate for you how harmful and how haram this sin is for you. However, I do want to elaborate on one additional thing that many people, we don't know this, or we overlook this. Watching pornography is not just spiritually harmful, doesn't only corrupt your heart. It's not just bad deeds and shaitan and whisperings or something. However, it does real life damage, perhaps permanent damage in some cases. And by the way, take this as a general rule. Whatever Allah Azza wa Jal decrees as haram for you has been decreed as haram for your own sake. You know, some Muslims, perhaps when we are uneducated, or perhaps when we don't read into some things, we sometimes start to complain about things like, why did Allah make this haram? You know, everybody out there is enjoying certain things. Why has it been made haram for you? And perhaps shaitan paints this picture in your head that if you go and you commit this sin, then you're going to be enjoying it. You're going to have a sense of pleasure. Like right now you're missing out, you poor Muslim, just because Allah told you that it's haram. But this is just a deception from shaitan. Because whatever Allah Azza wa Jal has made haram for you has been made for your own sake. And if you go and read about anything, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about pornography, but again, I'm just talking generally speaking. Go and read about anything that Allah Azza wa Jal has made haram, and you will find that there are also physical, mental, psychological harms as well that is associated with that act and with that deed. So it is no different when it comes to viewing explicit content. Studies and science shows that it has negative effects on your brain. So of the effects is it messes with your dopamine. And dopamine, I believe I explained it before. Dopamine is this the brain or your body's system of reward. So for example, when you see something that you really like, or you eat a chocolate that you really enjoy, and that sense of pleasure that just kind of goes, and you feel it and it tingles all throughout your body, this comes out of the release of a chemical called dopamine. So pornography messes up that system because it now changes what your body, what rewards your body, and what satisfies and what doesn't satisfy your body. Of the greatest harms that it causes is that it desensitizes you, and this is wallahi something that is horrifying that is happening in our society today. What do I mean by desensitizing? It means that what is normally supposed to please you no longer pleases you. Why? Because you find the need that you want more and more and more. Or not just more in terms of quantity. You find that you want more extreme content. So perhaps what is supposed to just, under normal circumstances give you sexual pleasure, no longer gives you that pleasure anymore. Just because of the content that you keep browsing. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us. This issue and this addiction and this sin has become much, much more widespread, obviously, in light of the modern world. Nowadays it is so easy to access explicit content. All it takes, is just a cell phone and access to an internet and just browsing it, searching up a couple of words, and you have all of these websites, you have all of these libraries, and now we're living in the era of AI as well, and may Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us from the harms that AI can also generate to us. But this is the point. Now it has become so easy to access all forms of content. So this is dangerous. It causes desensitization, and also it reduces attention span, especially for those who are more severely addicted. You will find, subhanallah, that if you go and find one of these people, you can look it up. There are people being interviewed online and things like this. They will tell you that they cannot even perform basic daily actions, like for example, they have a full-time job. They cannot focus on their job. They cannot focus on their meeting. They cannot focus on their schoolwork. Why? Because their brain, all they think about is that content, and they feel the desire, the constant drive that I need to go and watch this kind of content. It also creates compulsive behavior patterns, which is related to what I just mentioned. So it just creates that need to watch. Whenever you're feeling stressed, you want to watch. Whenever you feel anxious, all of a sudden it becomes like a go-to place for you to go and, I guess, de-stress or release your anxiety. You had a long day, you're tired, all of a sudden you feel like I need to go and watch just because I am feeling these kinds of feelings. Of the effects that it also has, and this is this is one of the most devastating results of someone who watches pornography. It affects relationships, it affects marriages as well. Subhanallah. And this is one, and I really, really encourage you to go and read about the damage that pornography does to marriages and to relationships. Studies have shown that couples, or if one of the couples is involved in pornography, as he is addicted to watching pornography, the chances of dissatisfaction in that relationship is highly increased. So the couple are no longer happy with one another, because once again you're desensitized. What was supposed to naturally please you and give you happiness no longer does so, because you are looking for more and more explicit content. Your spouse is no longer attractive to you because of these fake personas that you are watching online. You have a certain image in your head that this is what my spouse has to look like now. This is how her hair has to look like. This is how her body has to look like. His or her body has to look like, right? So now you're looking at your partner, and your partner no longer meets your standards just because you have now unrealistic standards in your head. Decreased intimacy and emotional pleasure, unrealistic expectations, increased chances of, may Allah protect us, increased chances of cheating and secretly betraying one another. This is a direct result of pornography, because once again you're no longer satisfied with your partner or with with your spouse, and so you have to search for pleasure. May Allah protect us from other places. And obviously all of this combined brings increased rates of divorce. And we find that in our modern world, the rate of divorce continues to go, and it's increasing at a steady rate. And this is definitely one of the major contributing factors. And this is why I am taking the time to break this down and talk about this. Many of us, again, are embarrassed to bring this up, or we are embarrassed to admit that we are addicted to the sin. And if you are someone who is addicted to the sin, then you're doing the right thing. You should not be going out to the public and telling people that, hey, I am addicted to watching haram content. This is not what you should be doing. However, I want you to understand the severity of the sin that you have addicted yourself to. And what you think today is private, and it's just between me and myself, and it's not going to affect anybody, it will come to bite you in the future, I promise you, if you do not deal with it today. And of the effects that it also has mentally and psychologically as well, is that, and you can subhanallah ask and listen to podcasts of people who have suffered from this, but usually people, when they watch this content, or when they have an urge to watch this kind of content, they're deluded by a sense of pleasure. They have a strong drive and urge that if I watch, I'm gonna feel the utmost pleasure, and my body is gonna feel a lot of pleasure. But then what actually happens when this person goes and watches this video, or browses these images, and what happens after the sin is committed? You feel a sense of guilt. You feel a sense of shame, like, how could I stoop down to this level? Like, what the heck am I doing in my life, right? And you just kind of aware that I'm just staring at a phone over here. What the heck am I doing, right? So you feel the sense of overwhelming guilt and shame instead of that pleasure that you thought that you were going to feel. And this guilt sometimes leads you to more anxiety, to more stress, to more, and perhaps this depression. And in some cases, it pushes you to isolate yourself. It makes you feel like, I'm not worthy to be around the people who are around me. I'm a disgusting person. I shouldn't be around these people. And so all of a sudden, you're no longer coming to the masjid. You're no longer interacting with society, and you start to isolate yourself more and more and more. And of course, the harms are numerous in terms of spiritual harms. And the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he tells us that when a person commits a sin, a black dot is placed on his heart. So it also affects your relationship with Allah. It affects your salah. It affects your adhkar. It affects your Quran. It hardens your heart. All of a sudden, you no longer feel connected to Allah in your salah. You no longer feel connected to the Quran. And again, this is more generic, right? This is not just purely related to watching explicit content, but this is more generic to any sin that you commit. However, one of the greatest forms of sin is the sin of the eyes. When throughout the day you continue to gaze at everything that is around you, and you look at your phone and you gaze at explicit content, and before you go to bed you have to browse certain videos, then this is all sins that are accumulated, sins upon sins that are being accumulated, that are directly influencing your heart. Now let's move beyond simply stating the dangers. How do you know if you are actually genuinely addicted? So let me start by this. Just because you have viewed a picture or you have viewed a video does not necessarily mean that you are addicted. However, it means that you are on the path that may potentially lead to addiction. So what does it mean to be addicted? Addiction means that you've done tawbah once, twice, 10 times, 1,000 times, and you keep returning to it. Like you commit the sin, you watch the video, and then you feel bad, and you make wudu, and then you go and pray, and then you make dua, and you say, Ya Allah, please forgive me. And after the sincere forgiveness and the sincere guilt, I'm not denying your guilt. Perhaps you were sincerely guilty, and this tawbah came from from your deepest depths of your heart. And it was a sincere tawbah, and perhaps may Allah accept your tawbah. But after your tawbah, you return back to it again. This is a sign of addiction. A sign of addiction is that you hide your behavior. You live a very secret life. You're one person in front of people, and you're another person in your own private life. Another big sign of addiction is that you feel like you don't have control over yourself. And again, I mentioned it kind of earlier. Maybe perhaps you're at work or you're at school, and all of a sudden you have this sudden urge that I have to go and watch, and you lose focus and you lose control over yourself. This is a sign of addiction. A sign of addiction is that even in the content that you are watching, you're watching very extreme content beyond what is considered to be normal. Again, even watching normal explicit content is of course haram. But now, because of the amount that you have watched, even normal interactions or normal haram content no longer pleases you, and you have to escalate into more extreme content. Of the signs that you are addicted is that you are spending an absurd amount of time watching or looking at these videos and images. It's no longer just a minute or two or just a few minutes. It becomes hours and hours in the day. And of the signs as well is that you don't even lower your gaze in real life. Like, okay, perhaps you got an urge and you are now looking at your phone. You looked for 5 minutes or something like this, but now you've gotten to a stage where everywhere you go, on the train, in the bus, at work, at school, at university, everywhere you go, your eyes are always searching for that eye candy, something that pleases your eye. So these are all signs that you are addicted to looking at haram content or explicit content. And if you are struggling with this, okay, there is always a way out for you. Now, first and foremost, before we talk about how do we get you out of this habit, inshallah, what caused you to fall into this in the first place? Because habits like this, they don't just come out of nowhere. And yes, Allah Azza wa Jal has planted within every single human being the natural attraction between man and woman. This is completely normal. Just because you're attracted to the opposite gender does not make you evil and does not justify you falling into this addiction. So what tends to make people fall into this form of addiction isn't actually the love of the sin and love of watching haram content. Rather, typically, it is something that is happening in their external life that makes them fall into that sin. So sometimes it's loneliness. You're struggling to find friends, you're struggling to interact with your community, and so it pushes you to, there is that void that needs to be filled. And that same void, sometimes it's not just loneliness, sometimes that void comes because you're bored. You don't know what to do. You have a gap in your time. You have a lot of free time, and you just don't know what to do with that time. And so perhaps shaitan plants that idea into your head, and you become curious, and curiosity transforms into an actual action, and then action transforms into an addiction. Sometimes it's stress. Stress because of family, stress because of finances, stress because of whatever, and you just feel like I need a way out. And so all of a sudden this becomes an easy way out for you. Of the reasons why, what causes people to fall into the sin, and I alluded to this earlier, easy access to content. And wallahi, this is so dangerous. Any device today that has access to internet, back in the day, before the era of internet, someone who wanted to watch this explicit content, they would have to sneak out of their homes. A youth, a teenager who wanted to watch this kind of content, they would have to sneak out of their parents' homes, and they would have to find a way to trick the merchant, the clerk, the cashier at the store, that sell me one of these explicit magazines. Or they would have to go to someone who's an adult and give them money, and they have to go through so many steps in order to get access to something that is haram. And even then, it's just a stationary piece of paper. Today, it's become super easy to access all sorts of content. So this is one of the biggest causes as well. Of the causes, is just that you don't have your life together. Your life is in shambles, things aren't going right for you, and it causes you to fall into the sin. And of course, a weak connection with Allah. So someone who is, lacking, something is not right when it comes to practicing your Islam. This is one of the effects as well. Now, that being said, we come now to the most important part. Perhaps this is what you've been waiting for. How do I get rid of this? Perhaps you've been struggling for years and years and years. How do I just get rid of it once and for all? Now, as is the case with every other addiction or other bad habit out there, there is no one solution that I can give you that will just solve all of your problems. It's not just a flick of a switch. It's not just a magical solution that's gonna, solve all of your problems. So I'm gonna be realistic here with you, and I'm gonna list you everything that you have to be doing. And all of this has to be done simultaneously, and it has to continue to be done over time. It's not just one step that you take that will eliminate that desire for you. First and foremost, make a serious intention. Because if you're not serious about this, you're not gonna get anywhere, okay? If you're coming into this, and perhaps even if you're watching this video with this attitude of, let me see what he says, is it gonna work, is it not work? If you're coming with a half intention, then it's not gonna work. You're gonna fall back again, and you're not gonna get rid of this habit. You have to be serious. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You want to get something, you have to be serious about it. So put a serious intention. I know perhaps you've attempted this to get rid of this habit tens and hundreds and thousands of times before. Forget all about that. From this point on, make a serious intention that, Ya Allah, this time I'm actually going to try for real to to get rid of this habit once and for all. So number one, serious intention. Number two, you have to strengthen your defenses, my friend. And by strengthen your defenses, I mean spiritually strengthen your heart, and physically also you need to strengthen your defenses. What do I mean by this? So you have to spiritually strengthen your defenses. You need to reconnect back with Allah. Again, this should come as no surprise to you. If you're lacking in your salah, this is a big reason probably why you're falling into this. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says in the Quran, "Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar." Salah prevents immorality. Salah prevents falling into wrongdoing. So if you find yourself falling into immorality and falling into wrongdoing, that means you are not establishing salah the way you are supposed to establish it. Perhaps you're missing your salawat. Perhaps you're not missing your salawat, but you're not taking your salah seriously. Perhaps there is no khushu' in your salah. There is no focus in your salah. Perhaps you're missing Quran in your life. Perhaps there is no dhikr of Allah in your life. Where is that connection in Allah? There has to be somewhere where you need to renew that link with Allah, not just within Ramadan, but also beyond the month of Ramadan. But also in addition to this, because that in itself is not simply enough. Of the actions that are both physical and spiritual as well, our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he recommended us that whoever is able to get married, then get married, right? So obviously, if lowering the gaze is a struggle, especially for our teenagers and youth. So if you are able to get married and channel your desires in a halal way, alhamdulillah, beautiful. But if you are unable to do that, our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he recommended us fast as much as you can, because fasting weakens the desire and strengthens your heart. It strengthens your defenses. However, realistically speaking, doing that and only that is not enough to cure an addiction. Perhaps this is enough for someone who's, maybe this is just a start for you. Maybe you've only looked at a few pictures, a few videos, and you're not at that stage of addiction yet, okay? And so you implement these steps. Perhaps these should be enough and sufficient for you to overcome whatever, and for Allah Azza wa Jalla to accept your tawbah, bi'idhnillah. However, if you're someone who's, again, you're seriously addicted, you fall under perhaps all of the causes that I had listed earlier, then you have to go above and beyond. Not only with your connection with Allah, but also with your physical environment. And this is what a lot of people overlook. And this is why a lot of Muslim teenagers or youth who have done perhaps research on this topic, and perhaps you've already heard, return back to Salah, return back to Allah, and you've tried these things and you're like, but it's not working, man. Like, I do Tawbah, I do Salah, I read Quran, but I still fall into this habit. So it's because you're doing part of the journey. You're not doing the full steps. What are the full steps? There has to be physical steps that are taken as well. You do not just simply rely on your willpower alone. You do not rely on your iman alone to get you out of trouble, to get you out of addiction, because it's not enough. And please understand what I'm trying to say here. Someone, you can bring the most pious sheikh in the world, someone who has the highest level of iman in the entire world, okay? And put him in an environment of haram, and an environment where haram is easy to access. Eventually, this person is going to slip. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. If your environment is not right, then you're making this 100 times more difficult for yourself. You need to put up physical barriers. You need to protect your environment. So if you find yourself, ask yourself, how do I find myself watching this kind of content? Is it through my computer? Is it through my phone? Is it both? Well, in that case, what can I do to my phone? What can I do to my computer such that even if I want to, I am unable to watch this? That is what you need to do as well. So alhamdulillah, nowadays, technology is a double-edged sword. You can use it to your benefit, you can use it to your harm. So while it has a lot of potential to harm, technology, alhamdulillah, has also evolved. There are many software. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, that you can install on your computers, install on your phones, that block automatically all of this content. And it is protected behind a password, so that even if you want to, it will not allow you to go and watch this kind of content. Perhaps if you're watching from a desktop and you're doing it and you have your own room and your computer is in your own room, perhaps this is the time for you to go and relocate your computer into the living room where your entire family sits down, so everybody is able to see whatever you're browsing on your computer. So obviously you're not going to be inclined to go and watch something that is haram in front of your family. That's just messed up, and nobody would do that in their right mind. So what are some barriers that you can so you can set up in your daily life to prevent you from accessing this kind of content. Perhaps you find yourself that late at night, doors are closed, lights are off, everybody's sleeping, that this is when you start to watch this content. Well, what can you do to prevent yourself from accessing your device at late hours in the night? Again, it could be through installing software, it could be by giving your phone to someone, or perhaps putting your phone outside of your room. This is one of the underrated solutions, by the way. Instead of having your phone laying next to you as an alarm clock, why don't you charge your phone in the living room outside and buy a physical alarm clock next to you and use that as your alarm clock, or like one of those electronic, whatever. Use a different alarm clock. You don't have to use your phone. Don't have your phone with you in your room. Have it somewhere else. But the general point here, I'm sure you get it by now. You need to distance yourself between you and the device that you are using to access this kind of content. Of the things is you need to practice lowering the gaze. Okay, when you are walking outside, have the habit of looking down, and don't allow your eyesight to go and look freely wherever it wants. Just look down, get the things that you want, and get out of there right away. And in fact, nowadays, in this time and age, if you're able to help it, stay at home. If you are able to help it, you don't need to be going out everywhere. Okay, if it's not a place that you have to go to out of necessity, then don't go to that place. Protect your eyesight. We're living here, I'm living here in the West, and many of us here probably are living in the West as well. I'm sure you don't need me to explain what happens here in this land when you go to the mall, when you go when you go to downtown, when you go to things like this during the spring and the summer season, when you go to the beach, when you go to the park. You see how people dress up, and subhanAllah, humans have their desires. So don't allow that desire to come out in the first place. Just distance yourself from these places altogether. Of the things that you should do as well is replace the habit. Again, I mentioned a lot of the times the habit is developed because of boredom. You're bored, you're lonely, you just have free time, you don't know what to do. Then go find something beneficial to do. Go work out at the gym. Go and go to the masjid, right? Perhaps go to the masjid, even though you might not be the best Muslim out there, but maybe that gives you a change of pace in your life, a change of environment. You need to kind of change something in your daily life. Set something productive for yourself. Go and learn a hobby. Go and learn something new, whether it's about your deen or about your dunya. Go and do something to fill this void that is in your life, because if you do not fill that void, then shaitan will come and fill it for you, and more than likely you will fall into these kinds of habits. Of the really underrated solutions that you can do as well, obviously we all understand as Muslims that there is a day of judgment and there is accountability, and that Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to weigh your good deeds and bad deeds, and He's going to reward you for your good deeds, and there's potentially punishment for the bad deeds. Why don't you implement your own good deeds? Why don't you implement your own accountability system in this life as well? Have a system of rewards and punishments in this world. So perhaps, set a goal for yourself that if I quit this sin, if I completely stop watching anything, and I am able to do this truthfully for 1 full month consecutively, then I'm gonna allow myself to splurge a little bit. You know what? The latest iPhone that came out, I'm gonna allow myself to go and purchase that iPhone. I'm gonna reward myself for my effort by buying something that I really, really want. Reward yourself. Go ahead. This is something good and beneficial. If it's gonna push you into overcoming your bad habits, then by all means, this is not israf, this is not wasting. This is now a means of you're now using dunya to overcome your own bad habits, subhanAllah. And on the other hand, put yourself a punishment system that perhaps if I fall into the sin, if I watch a video or I look at a picture and I let myself do this, then I am going to pay a penalty. So perhaps you're gonna give a sadaqah, and it can't be something that is too small that it won't affect you, and it can't be something that is too big that it will destroy you. Pick an amount that is basically that's gonna sting you, right? It's not gonna like drastically affect you. It's not gonna harm you, but it's enough for you to just be like, why did I do it? Now I have to, take out $100 and put it in the donation box. I could have had that $100 for myself, or depending on how on your financial state, it could be less, it could be more, right? So pick an amount, a penalty that anytime you fall into the sin, I'm gonna pay this penalty. And of course, this is a double benefit. Not only does it discourage you from falling into the sin, but it also, subhanAllah, even if you do fall into the sin and now you give a sadaqah, now you're following a bad deed with a good deed, and perhaps this is a form of tawbah, and Allah will forgive you for that sin. Of the really important steps, or this is not really a step, this is more of a psychological state, okay? And this is really, really important. And I know I've taken a long time in this lecture. I didn't mean for us to take this long, but I just feel like it is really, really important to address. And last and most importantly, do not ever lose hope in Allah. Do not ever allow shaitan to put you in a state of despair, to make you feel like there's no point, to make you feel like I'm so deep into this, that I'm a horrible human being, that there is no way out for me. How would Allah ever forgive someone like me? Subhanallah. You're dealing with Allah Azza wa Jal here. You're not dealing with me. You're not dealing with just some random human being. You're dealing with the most merciful. And in fact, we learn that the sin, just this thought or this belief that Allah will not forgive me, that there is no way back for me, this in itself is a greater sin than any other sin that you can commit in your entire life, subhanAllah. So don't ever allow shaitan to get into your head and plant these thoughts for you, okay? And also don't allow shaitan to get between you and doing good deeds, because shaitan will now come to you. Again, this is how shaitan, one of his tactics, he will come to kick you down even more. And he will tell you, look at you, you're a disgusting human being, you keep committing these sins. Do you think Allah is going to accept your salah anymore? Do you think Allah is going to accept your recitation of the Quran? So he makes you ashamed of yourself, and he makes you withdraw from doing good deeds. Subhanallah. And this is so foolish, because right now you're in a state of sin. You are in need of that good deed more than anyone else in this world right now. You are more in need of salah than anyone else. You are more in need of Quran than anyone else. How could you allow shaitan to convince you that, because you're sinful, you should not be doing these deeds? Now, because you're doing the sin, you should increase these deeds times 10. It's not, you should not ever withdraw. Don't allow shaitan to fool you. And guess what? If you relapse, if you end up falling, as I mentioned earlier in the survey, 72% of the people in that small amount, in that survey of over 1,000 people, over 70% of them, they relapsed when they were serious about quitting their sin. So relapses, obviously I'm not saying that, it's good if you relapse, but I'm saying if you relapse, then don't beat yourself up over it, okay? If you relapse, go make tawbah, brush up yourself, get up and keep on going. Your battle is not over. You relapsed once, it's not the end of the world. Go repent back to Allah and keep on pushing and pushing, and by the will of, by the permission of Allah and by the efforts of your own, inshallah, you will be able to overcome the sin. Others who were struggling more than you were able to overcome it as well. You just need to take the steps. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of effort. But again, this is the habit that Allah Azza wa Jal is testing you with. So don't lose hope. Keep pushing. Perhaps it is through this habit that you will find the mercy of Allah. You will find your ranks being elevated. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to purify our hearts, to allow us to purify our eyes and to purify our nafs. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help us in lowering our gazes, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to open our hearts to what is halal, and to make our hearts dislike that which is haram and prohibited. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us among those who are constantly repenting, and for those and among those who are righteous. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.